Good morning, welcome to our third Zazen workshop here in Mikage. Third time is always difficult for me because basically I did all of the explanation that needs to be done. There's really not much more to say. Didier asked me if I could maybe say something about how it's possible to focus, which is not easy both when we meditate but also in daily life. For example, if you're self-employed, can happen that you in the morning you say, oh, today I will do this and this and this. You have to do work on your computer, and then by lunchtime or maybe in the late afternoon you realize, what have I been doing all the time? You've been busying yourself with stuff, but it wasn't what you actually wanted to do. But it often takes a long time until you realize, where was my mind all of the time? All of us, we see people going around with their smartphones, walking around, and sometimes it's difficult to navigate through these people because they turn this direction, that direction, and you ask yourself, oh, doesn't this person notice that there's people walking around or people on their bicycle? Sometimes you have somebody with a smartphone on the bicycle, we all know the situation from ourselves, from our others, where we're here, but the mind is somewhere else. We don't even realize that our mind is somewhere else. So today I want to focus on this problem during the meditation, during sitting, but hopefully then also it helps us to apply this to daily life, to be more in what we're actually doing when we do it, rather than be somewhere completely else. So what I'm teaching basically is traditional Zen, but all what I say today will probably apply to other meditation techniques or also to mindfulness. Mindfulness was a big boom 10 years ago in Japan, and in the West 20 years ago, 30 years ago, everybody was talking about mindfulness and maybe is still talking about mindfulness. So it's basically what I'm talking about today is about how to be mindful, or what does mindfulness mean. Maybe today we can have several short, actually, practice periods while I'm talking. So I want to start with the first practice period right now. I want to invite you, for focusing, you can focus on basically anything, but traditionally the breath is chosen as an object because one thing that's nice about the breath is, well, it's happening from day to night, even if you're not conscious, but you can also be conscious of it. You can even control it, although what we try to do now, you don't have to control the breath, just make it conscious. And another thing that's nice about the breath is it's moving, so there's a change there. You're breathing out, you're breathing in, so there's a change. You could also, for example, concentrate on the tips of your thumbs touching, but there's no movement there. So that is a little bit more difficult to actually keep your attention here. While with the breath, you're breathing out, and then you're breathing in again, and then you're breathing out again. So it's not super easy. You're going to realize it's not super easy, but it's a favorite object that's been chosen even since the time of the Buddha. And the nice thing is you can take it everywhere. You can apply it almost everywhere, even in certain forms of activity. It's possible to do the activity and still, if you feel you're not focused, to focus on the breath while you're doing this activity. So step one is focus on your breath. Step two is start thinking. That's not something that you actually need to do consciously. So you don't tell yourself, now I'm proceeding to step 2. You do this, but then eventually this is going to happen. You're starting to think about something. And step 3 is you realize, I'm thinking. And the interesting thing is, this doesn't happen simultaneously. While you're thinking, you don't realize you're thinking. That's exactly the point of not being focused or not being in the moment. Mindlessness is you're doing something without realizing that you're doing it. You thought you were focusing on your breath, but actually you're thinking without even realizing that you're thinking. We're going to try it out in a couple of minutes. Like, let's say 5 minutes. Try to focus your breath on the 5 minutes without even starting to think. Maybe there's some super mindful person in here and they're going to manage to do it, but probably you're going to realize actually you started thinking, even after 1 minute, 2 minutes. And hopefully during the 5 minutes, you also get to step 3, where you realize, I thought it would be possible to concentrate for 5 minutes on my breath, but actually I've been thinking. If then somebody would ask you, well, how long were you thinking? It's hard to tell. Maybe a couple of seconds, maybe half a minute, maybe a full minute or 2 minutes. You were thinking without even realizing that you were thinking. What do you do next? Let go of that thought. Let go of your thoughts. So here you let go of what you have been thinking. And step 5 would be return to your breath. So you return to step 1, and maybe the same thing is going to happen again. I would invite you to join me and do it for 5 minutes. Maybe you go through this circle a number of times. And let's see how good that works. 日本人の皆さんでもよかったですか？一応、呼吸に心を置いて、でもついつい雑念が浮かんで考え事を始める。考え事をしているその最中はまだ自分は考えているんだという気づきはないけれども、3番目は今考え事をしたんだと。気づいたらその考え事を手放して呼吸に戻る。And when you focus on your breath, you can focus, for example, on your nose, if that's easy for you. But in Zen, usually we focus on the abdomen. So for that, you need to practice abdominal breathing. If you're not used to that, you don't have to. But for me, it's kind of easy. So when I focus on the breath, if I feel the breath, I feel my abdomen kind of shrinking, going inwards when I breathe out. And then when I breathe in, I feel my belly expanding again. For me, that's the easiest. But if for you it's easier to feel the breath through the nose, or maybe the breast is extending, contracting, you can focus on that too. I will focus on my abdominal breathing. Okay. As always, I will ring the bell 3 times in the beginning, and then in the end I will ring it once, and then we can see how it worked. How did that work? 5 minutes of focusing on the breath. Who succeeded in keeping his mind on the breath 5 minutes without thinking? No one? Well, we got a professional here.
No, I can concentrate. I mean, I'm not really concentrated. Just
Yeah,
I'm with my breathing.
yeah,
But then, of course, the thoughts came.
yes,
And the first one was, I don't know, somehow. I don't wear rakusu because I'm not in the temple.
yes,
Or, you know, very
Yeah.
often at home.
yeah,
So it was like something, oh, rakusu.
yeah,
And it was okay.
yeah,
And then there's another one. Yeah, how I remembered Myokan because of
yeah, yes,
connection.
yeah, yeah.
My fellow monk. And then the last one, and then I come back. And then the last one was how good it is to sit in a group.
So when you realized you were thinking, what were you doing next?
I'm not, intensely thinking, so it just
Mm-mm.
remove myself a little bit more from
Mm-mm.
the thinking, and you realize you're thinking, and then it goes. For me, I mean, 5 minutes for me is not a lot. I slowly really come into it, and then I become more settled,
Mm-mm.
and I will not really follow the thoughts that much anymore.
I see.
Yeah.
Peter, how did it go for you?
It went very well for 4 minutes.
4 minutes?
Not totally, but it came. I was thinking, and I caught it within a second.
Yes.
And back.
Yeah,
And then the last minute, the thought that came in
yeah.
was a fundamental existentialist thought of mine, that a recurring one, and I got carried away. So live on. So
Good,
it depends
good.
on seems to depend on the intensity of the thought. Whether I can quickly go back or whether I'm lost.
How did it go for you?
Me?
Yes.
There are many thoughts or feelings in my head. So
Yes.
it was not easy to focus on breath.
Yes. Yeah.
But I feel very peaceful.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you realized, oh, there's thoughts in my head, what did you do? Like you were sitting, you felt peaceful, but there were many thoughts in your head.
I tried to let them go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But what can I say? Just I tried.
Yes.
And I think it was gone
Okay.
at the end of the year.
Okay. Yeah. Welcome. Did you come to the other workshops, or is this your first time?
My first time.
Okay. Great. You have any experience with meditation?
Yeah. A few
Okay.
times,
Oh.
yeah.
So for 5 minutes we tried this one, focusing on the breath, but then without realizing you're gonna start thinking, but at one point you realize I'm thinking. So at that point you should let go of the thought and return to the breath. How were these 5 minutes for you?
I don't know how many of the 5 minutes I got, because I got here a bit late. But the minutes that I got, I think I went through most of the process.
Okay, okay. How often?
It was a loop, so a few times.
A few times, yeah. Good,
Yeah.
good.
But I think I managed to return to my breath
Yeah.
a few times.
Yeah, good, good. How was it for you?
私は今の5分間で
ええ
腹式呼吸しながら
ええ
吐く息で自分の体を緩める力を
はい
抜くことが出ました。
はい、はい。
時々変な考えがビヨンと出てくるので、また吐く息に集中して体を緩めることをやりました。
なるほど
緩みきってないです。
はは。じゃあうまくいったんですか？
はい、多分そうだと思います。
This kind of 5-step approach to mindfulness is, I think, quite common approach that you can find in this or similar ways, for example, in books. And if it works for you, that's great, but I've the feeling that some people sometimes misunderstand mindfulness as this. If you focus on the breath, you're mindful. And if this happens, then, well, you're lost, or the mindfulness is lost. And in a way that's true also in our daily life. For example, right now I'm writing on a book, I sit on the computer, I'm looking for some word or something, I do some research, I look something up on Wikipedia, and then basically the real life version of this is happening. I go down various rabbit holes, and after 1 hour I realize, well, but I was writing a book. I'm far away from the topic of what I've been writing on. So this happens, and you're not at your task anymore, but you realize I'm thinking. And the interesting thing is happening here. A lot of people, when they reach this 3rd step, oh, I was thinking, they think that, how do you say? In Japanese, you would say, shippai shita. I did a mistake. I did something wrong. I did it wrong. At step 3, you say, oh, I thought I was meditating. I thought I was mindful, but again, it didn't work. Again, I did a misstep. So people here almost, they feel a little bit ashamed of themselves each time they reach step 3. And there's also some people, sometimes when you ask them, how did it work? Oh, it was fine for me. There were no thoughts. Because you don't want to feel bad for yourself. You want to be a good boy, a good girl. It worked 5 minutes. And somehow we have difficulty with this step 3. But actually, when we talk about mindfulness, there's 2 sides of mindfulness. One is focusing, concentration. And the other side of mindfulness, in Japanese you say kizuki. Kizuki means to become aware of something, to realize something, to have a small realization. For example, you realize that you left your bag somewhere. Of course, you didn't do it on purpose, but then on your way home, you realize, oh, I left my bag at work. That's kizuki. And this word is used for translating mindfulness in Japanese. You also probably know the Japanese word kiotsukete. Be careful. For example, when you send your kids to school in Japanese, you would say kiotsukete terashai. Kiotsukete means to also be mindful, to be focused, concentrated, but it's something different from kizuku. Kizuku, you can't do that. You can't tell yourself, kizuite ne. It happens. I lost my bag. Or whatever. You can tell yourself when you cross the road, you look left, you look right, you look left again. That means kiotsukeru. But then, just when you wanted to cross the road, there's somebody coming from behind, and you realize that. That's kizuku. And this one here, that's the kizuku aspect of mindfulness. Something, it happens. You can't tell yourself, I'm going to do it. This is, you can say, well, I'm going to try. I do my best to focus on your breath. That's important, but then this is maybe even more important. For several seconds, maybe even half a minute or 2, I was thinking, and I didn't realize it, but now I realized, I'm back in the moment. So rather than feel kind of ashamed of yourself, oh, I was thinking again, I need to let go. Actually, in this moment is a small, in Zen we say satori. You can't make a satori experience, but it happened. And well, the nice thing about the trains here, that they often do this. They bring you back into the moment. When you lost track of your breath. You started to thinking, but then the trains come and, oh, I was here trying to meditate. So this is something that's totally underrated. People don't understand how important this step is. I'm thinking. I wasn't in the moment. And another thing that's a little bit difficult is this fourth step. So now you tell yourself, I let go of my thoughts. But the problem is, how do you do that? I also often talk about letting go. But some people think it's something that you have to do, like step 3. Now, I'm gonna let go. But that's impossible. It's like trying to not think about the pink elephant. I'm letting go of the pink elephant. So how do you let thoughts go when you realize that what you're thinking? I think most of you know how to do it. Basically, you do that by returning directly. You don't have to first let go and after that you return to the breath. You let go by returning directly to your breath, to the awareness of sitting here. Or what you can also do, and I think I heard that a little bit from what Anjin-san said, rather than say this is a kind of black and white thing that either I'm concentrating on my breath or I'm thinking. Often it's a kind of a gray thing. You are with the breath, but still in the background there are thoughts. And sometimes your attention goes to this background music and you keep a loose track of the breath. But it's not that you have to kind of switch off the music to get back to the breath. You can leave the thoughts there. There's still thinking going on. But you just move a little bit more back. You stay a little bit closer with the breath. So it's actually not that you kind of have to switch off the thoughts. Although in the beginning, well, it helps to focus only on the breath and forget the thoughts. But actually it's not a kind of this or that thing. It's kind of you're moving in between. The thoughts are always there. They stay with you, but they stop being a problem. It's not that you couldn't be aware of the breath and still allow the thoughts. So one thing that's important is when we talk about letting go, it's not something that you need to do. And I often get this feedback from people that have meditated for a couple of months, even a couple of years. And they heard from their teacher, for example, myself, Zazen means to let go of yourself. And they tell me, I've been doing this for 6 months now, for 2 years. Still, I can't let myself go. Well, because you try to let yourself go. There's this idea, I need to let go of myself, of my thoughts, whatever. No. So what I say in this situation, forget about letting go. Forget about letting go. Do what you do in that moment. For example, when you're cooking in the kitchen, and even then, thoughts come up in your mind. Although usually it's not so much as when you're sitting because you're busy with whatever you're doing. But there's thoughts in your mind. If you tell yourself, now I need to let go. While you're cooking, while you're cutting the carrot, probably you're going to cut your finger. Rather than telling yourself, I need to let go, I need to be in the moment, just cut the carrot. In the case of Zazen, sitting, just sit. You don't even have to remove the thoughts, but return to the actual sitting. So you could say you could actually skip step 4. If you realize I'm thinking, be thankful for that realization. That's the moment mindfulness happens. That's something, it's like a gift, this realization. Oh, I was off. And rather than tell yourself, now I'm supposed to let go of these thoughts. Just return to the breath, get closer to the breath. Maybe most important point is don't be embarrassed when you, how do you say? Ertappen. How do you say in English? Ertappen. Catch yourself while you're thinking. When you realize, I was thinking. Don't be ashamed of yourself. Don't be embarrassed. Maybe we try it once more, another 5 minutes. Maybe you see a little change. So maybe you did it already the first time, but this time, whenever you realize this, don't think that you make a mistake, but rather enjoy this moment of mindfulness where you thought you were watching your breath, but there's actually a thought in your mind. And don't tell yourself, now I need to let go of that, but just return to the breath. And if it's possible to do that without switching off the thought, the thought is still there, but you're really with the breath. You can do that. Or if that's kind of difficult, it's an either or situation, just return to the breath until the next thought comes popping up. How did it go this time? Same as first time? Any difference? What kind of meditation did you practice until now?
A few different kinds.
Yes?
Hare Krishna, Brahma,
Mm.
Yeah, Brahma meditation,
Mm.
a few different types.
What do you do during meditation when you do Hare Krishna or Brahma type?
Chant the Hare Krishna mantra.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Rama Rama, Rama
Yeah.
Rama, Hare. Yeah.
Yeah.
Few times.
Yeah. Also, well, in Buddhism, there are, especially in Tibetan Buddhism, there's this kind of meditation where you, for example, chant Om or some mantra, which will help you to concentrate, because if your mind is with those words, even if you don't understand the words, it's very difficult. Well, if you become good, you can think while you're chanting, but usually it helps. It helps if your mind is with those words that you're chanting. It at least reduces the amount of thinking that's going on. While if you just sit silent and it's only your breath, probably you will have more thoughts. What we didn't do in the latest workshops, but we can try today because there's less people of us. In Zen, there's walking meditation. We call it Kinhin. In Japanese, you write it with these characters. That's also the character for the sutras, or kyo, but in this case you read it kin. And hin is this character here for walking. Usually you would read it ko or gyo, but in this case it's read hin, kin, hin. And in Japanese Zen there's two schools, Rinzai and Soto. I'm and Anjin-san, we are from the Soto school. Rinzai school is a little different. In Rinzai everything is done faster and louder. And in Soto it's more, how do you say, meditative in a way, slower and maybe less about loudness, but more about doing it exactly the way that your elders do. Anyway, Soto style Kinhin is very slow. There's a word in Japanese, it's called Issoku Hampo, which means one breath, half a step. Let me demonstrate how we do that. And the reason why I want to introduce you to Kinhin is, one is it helps to stretch the legs, and it's a nice opportunity to stretch the legs. But also you're gonna maybe realize Kinhin is basically the same as sitting meditation just while walking. But you might realize it's much easier because you have something to focus on. It's not only the breath, but you coordinate each breath with the steps. Basically what you do is you start standing with your feet maybe shoulder, how do you say, distance of your shoulders. If you like, you can already stand up with me. And you hold your left hand, you have a fist, build a fist with the left hand and put it in front of the solar plexus. And with the right hand you cover your left hand. And there's probably various ways how you do it, how you coordinate with the breath, with the movement of your feet. This is the way that, in a way, I developed from my teacher. When I asked my teacher, for example, well, when do you move the foot? With the breathing out or with the breathing in? I think what he told me was that you move it when you breathe out. But then when I wanted to have more kind of exact things, and then, for example, one thing that I was always confused about, it's a small detail, but in Europe, when we did Kinhin, we moved the whole body with the foot, and then we stood still. And then with the next breath, again, the whole body would move. And I asked my teacher, is that the way it's supposed to be, or should it more be like a continuous movement? You move the foot, but then slowly your body keeps moving. And my teacher said, well, basically you can figure out by yourself. There's no manual for that. So basically what I tell you now is what I figured out myself. You start like this, and then when you breathe out, you move your foot half forward. Actually, when you're doing this in a temple also, there's going to be many people in the hall, and you have to also coordinate that you don't walk faster or slower than the others. So if you breathe fast, you will make a small step. If you breathe slow, you make a bigger step. But today, you don't have to worry about the others. Just when you breathe out, make a small half step forward. And then while you breathe out, I continue to move so slowly I move the weight of my body from the foot that's still standing to the foot that I just put forward. Slowly my weight moves forward, and then when I breathe in, I lift the foot that's behind, and when I breathe out, the next time I move that forward. And then slowly, slowly, slowly I move my weight from the foot that's behind to the foot that's forward. And then again, breathing in, I lift the back foot and move it forward. And basically that's Kinhin. Let's do that also for a couple of minutes. "50 minutes after that, so your feet tend to fall asleep, your legs, your hips start to hurt, so it helps to stretch the feet, to get the blood circulating to a certain degree. But it's also these periods in between. Some people think they're kind of like a toilet break. So in Antaiji, sometimes we sit from morning to night, so-called sessions. And these Kinhin periods is the time when you can go to the toilet as well. So people tell you, please don't go during Zazen, don't move during Zazen, but if you need to go to the toilet, do it during Kinhin, which leads some people to the idea that Kinhin basically is nothing like a toilet break, and some people go drink a tea, others smoke a cigarette because, well, it's Kinhin, it's not real Zazen. But of course, Kinhin is just as good a part of our practice as when we sit. It's not that this is what is important and when we walk it's less important. And actually, I don't know how it worked for you, but a lot of people tell me in Kinhin it's much easier. It's much easier. Because where's your mind? You have to, of course, watch your breath, but then you also move your feet. So it's almost impossible to forget your breath because then you can't take the next step. It's much easier to stay here. Of course, does this really mean that it's better for meditation? Not necessarily, because the more you stay here, the less you have this realization. Although, of course, also in Kinhin, sometimes you drift off and you realize, I don't actually know, am I breathing out right now? Am I breathing in? Sometimes people forget to take steps and everybody else behind them. Right now we were kind of, how do you say, moving in a strange way. Usually what you would do in a Zen monastery is you go in a square like this. And so people walk like ducks behind each other. And if somebody is kind of drifting off during Zazen, sometimes you wonder, this guy hasn't taken a step in 2 minutes. Is he still alive? Is he still breathing? Of course he's breathing, it's just that his mind is somewhere else. Any thoughts about Kinhin? How was it for you?
I mean, for me it's a bit awkward because I shouldn't. No, I'm doing my physiotherapy now.
Yes,
because
yeah.
of my left hip. So I should never really, not yet, step on my
I see.
left. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I am, today I'm not really in a good shape, but I am getting better, so I can do that easier.
Yes.
And it was interesting because what I was taught and that the way that I was finally realized, oh, I can maybe do this with Kinhin, for me it was very difficult from
Yes.
the start.
Yeah.
Like, just what do you do? How do you coordinate the whole
Yes.
thing?
Yes.
Much more than really sitting.
Yeah.
Now I do, what I was told was, just take a half step, then you breathe in and straighten your back.
Mm-mm.
And then wait just a little bit, just like, the breath is here somewhere.
Yes. Yes.
And then relax and
Yeah.
breathe out and
Yeah.
make half a step.
Yeah.
And then, okay, breathe in, breathe out, half
Mm.
a step.
Mm.
And with this, I'm very comfortable now. So
Mm.
that's what I'm
Mm.
doing.
Mm.
But
Mm.
before I was like totally, all the time moving my body. Now
Mm.
actually the breath is moving, but not all the time my body.
Mm.
It's-
Mm.
Yeah, that for me is the easiest way to do it.
I see. Yeah. Yeah, some people it helps to kind of also imagine that when you breathe out, when you breathe in, kind of there's the straightening thing. In yoga, it's much more important than in Zen that like you're breathing in, then you do this, you're breathing out. But also in Zen, kind of when you're breathing in, both sitting but also walking, there's this kind of upward, not a big movement, but this, and then when you go down, it sometimes helps to imagine that you're breathing through the back of your foot. Of course, you don't have any nostrils, you can't breathe through it, but you imagine that when you take this step, slowly you breathe through that foot that you just moved forward. And that also helps you to keep you grounded. So during the sitting, you can also do that. For example, if you have pain in the feet, it hurts. Sometimes it can help that you imagine that you breathe through that pain, through the pain that you experience, through it into the ground that you're sitting on. Anything else? Any other questions? Anything that you felt about Kinhin?
I kind of alternate, even in a short session, between sort of what you talked about, the European idea, Vipassana idea.
Yes.
Every moment you're conscious of what you're doing.
Yes.
And that, what I think you said, what you saw in Japan, which was you just, you don't focus on everything, you just make breath and step, breath, step. And I kind of naturally sort of fall a few minutes this, a few minutes of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I never, it's kind of a, arbitrary in my mind.
Okay.
So. They seem to have different purposes in a way.
In Theravada, there is the Vipassana meditation technique, but often it's combined with a different technique that's called Samatha or Shamatha. For example, they also have it here in Japan, Goenka style Theravada meditation. I attended one of the 10 days retreats there, and they tell you for the first 3 days to focus on the area between your nose and your mouth, this triangle. And that's basically this kind of focus on only one thing. And of course what happens is you start to think, you realize you're thinking, so you bring your focus back to that triangle. And then the 2/3 of the retreat after that, the last 6 or 7 days, it's more kind of an opening up. but what they do there is basically body scan. So you're still focused, but you're not focused on one point, but you kind of shift your awareness from the tip of your head to the feet and then back again. But at one point you get to this point where you don't have to consciously always shift, but it's kind of a coming and going like an ocean, and the whole body is aware. So there's this opening up. And I wouldn't say that in Japan we always try to focus on one thing, because, for example, in Antaiji, where I was training as a monk for almost 30 years, when you're the cook, you're also responsible for answering the telephone. And when guest comes, also often the cook is the person that first has to greet them. And the cook in the afternoon, while cooking, you have to prepare the bath, the hot bath, and you have to let it in. It usually takes a couple of minutes. So when you're the cook, it's not enough to just concentrate on cutting the carrots. If the telephone is ringing, you have to answer that telephone. And if you opened the tap of the bath 5 minutes ago, you have to not forget about closing it 5 minutes later. So just being in that one action that you're concentrating on is not enough. Actually, multitasking is also part of the practice when you're the cook. And in our daily lives, like if you have a family, but you also have a job and there's other things, and you have a meditation practice, just being in the moment is usually not enough of an answer. You have to listen, what are my kids doing, but there's also other tasks that you have to take care of. So for me, Zen practice is not just do one thing and forget about the rest. Often it's, you have to listen to the whole music, the whole orchestra of life. And the whole orchestra of life is, there's a family going on, there's a job, there's the telephone ringing, there's lots of things going on in that moment. But sometimes we get lost in this big scenery. So when that happens, for example, returning to the breath, or in this case, you do Kinhin, you just concentrate on the step that you're taking. It can help, but it's certainly not an answer to all of our life problems that just be with the breath. It can help a lot, but you can't do that for the rest of your life and expect others to take care of your family and your job. Probably I used this metaphor of the shepherd and the sheep in one of the workshops that we already did. Basically, the metaphor is the following. Imagine your mind was something like a big meadow, and maybe meditation, you think, oh, I'm going to just enjoy the quiet on this meadow. But then you hear all these sheep making noises, meh, 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 here, meh, 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 there. Basically, that's all the thoughts that come up, sometimes strong emotions that come up, things that somebody told you yesterday, and you're still angry about what that person told you. So in your mind, you already imagine meeting that person next week, and then I'm gonna tell him this and this. But if you tell this, then maybe he will say that. And if he says that, then. So this thing happening. So that's all these sheep, black sheep, white sheep. And during meditation, you realize at one point, that would be step 3, oh, there's a lot of noise going on here. And then the problem is, what do? You maybe heard, I'm supposed to let go of these thoughts. The sheep are supposed to be quiet. I need to tell them to be quiet. I have to separate the white sheep from the black sheep. I have to build fences. So before you realize this, you play the role of the shepherd. And also what often happens, these 5 minutes, they went good. But the next 5 minutes, they're not so good. So you try to give grades to your own meditation practice. Today I was very mindful, but the next day, maybe you're not so mindful. That's also something that the shepherd loves to do, kind of give himself grades. Today it was good, or it was not so good. And at one point, better sooner than later, we need to give a break to the shepherd. We should let go of this idea, I'm supposed to be the shepherd here. But rather, what I would like to invite you to do next is be like the sky. And that's something like Peter mentioned Vipassana meditation. You're the big sky and you allow everything on that meadow to happen. Focusing on the breath is a little bit like when the sheep start to make noise. You find that one big tree in the middle of the meadow and the shepherd lies down and looks up into the tree. He sees the branches, he hears the sound of the wind in the branches. And when that happens, you forget about the sheep, or even if you don't forget totally about the sheep, you hear the meh, 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 but your mind is with the sound of the wind in the leaves. And that can help. But the next step, and Peter kind of hinted at that, you can't always focus on one thing. Sometimes you have to widen up. The next step would be not to lie under the tree, but to become the sky. And you see the sheep doing their play there. They're playing their game there. Maybe somewhere there's still the shepherd thinking that he needs to somehow control the game. But you don't identify with the shepherd anymore. You also don't identify with the sheep. You just let it happen. You just let happen what's happening during these 5 minutes. And there's train passing by and the train brings you back into the moment. There's this body sitting here. There's the breath. There's the other people sitting around you. You already start to think about what you're going to eat for lunch, stuff like that. But you don't tell yourself, I need to be focused on this or that, but you allow everything of that to happen without becoming a, how do you say, play ball? You don't let the sheep distract you. You become like, well, the sky, the space itself, where all of this realizes. And I think that's something that I think Anjin-san wanted to hint at when I asked her first about how did it work with the thoughts. You don't have to erase the thoughts. The thoughts are also part of the scenery, but you allow them to be there without being disturbed by them. Maybe I also used this metaphor of the mountain the last time. Like in Osaka, it would be Ikoma-san or it could be Lokko. You are like a Lokko, the mountain Lokko. You sit here. And that's also one reason why the posture is quite important. Like if you have a stable posture, it's easier also for the mind to develop this mountainous stability. You sit there like Mount Lokko and you see over there's Osaka, there's Universal Studios, there's the jet coaster is moving. You see a big, how do you call these wheels, Kanlansha. You see that wheel moving and trains are moving, JR is moving, Hanshin is moving, Hankyu railway is moving and people are sitting in the railway. And usually what we do then, we also jump into the railway. We move with the thoughts. We also sit in the jet coaster. That's kind of what I said when next time when I meet that guy again, I'm gonna tell him to leave me alone, leave me in peace. And in that moment, you're sitting in the jet coaster. Becoming like the sky in this metaphor would be a little bit like watching the scenery from the top of Mount Lokko. You see things are moving in all directions, but you're not sitting in the train. You're not in Universal Studios right now. You are the mountain. Let's try to practice that, becoming the sky, and just see the scenery as it is without controlling it like the shepherd. you are completely detached from the scenery. It might be a little bit more difficult because here, when you realize I'm thinking, what do you do next? You can return to the breath. In the case of the scenery, when you realize, oh, I'm sitting in the train, I'm not the mountain anymore, where do you return to? Well, you return to the mountain, but basically the mountain is everything. You return to the sky, but the sky is always there. So it's a little bit more difficult because you don't have this concrete point, that one point of breath. You return to everything. You return to the whole thing. What happens is that usually there's one part of the scenery that has the greatest force of attraction. For example, you see Universal Studios over there. There's a lot of movement, there's a lot of noise, there's the music playing. That's where your mind goes. When you realize that happens, you return to the whole picture. So you open up, and there's still this big attractive part there. But you allow the whole scenery, the other mountains, and there's the Setonaikai, the ocean. You allow all of that to be part of your awareness without shutting that one part that's so attractive. You don't shut that out. Let's try it for 5 minutes and see how that works. How was this kind of meditation? More or less the same, or did you feel a difference between the focusing on the breath, where you know where to focus on, and in this case you're the sky, or you're the whole screen where the landscape appears on?
I like the mountain, I like the sky, I like the ocean. I like that, being able to just pull that in and just see ripples of, not so important ripples.
Okay, good, good. 今回の瞑想、なんか六甲山になったつもりで座るのと呼吸に集中するのとなんか違ってましたか？大体同じですか？
同じではなかった。
はいはい。
ビパッサナの方が慣れてるからやりやすい。
なるほど、なるほど。はい。
で六甲山の方は若干六甲山の上からランドスケープで見るっていう感じは慣れてないから、
はいはい。
意識が時々飛んでました。
なるほど。はい。What's your name?
Langer.
Langer.
Yeah, L-A-N-G-A. Langer. Yeah.
Langer. How did it work for you?
There was a lot of wandering around.
Yeah.
I definitely went to many different places. I was thinking about tomorrow and next week and my plans. Yeah. So, but I think it was good. Like the style was interesting.
Yeah, as I said in the beginning, it's a little bit more difficult because when you realize, oh, I'm a little bit lost. I'm lost in the clouds. Like clouds in the sky are another favorite metaphor. The sky doesn't have to be worried about the clouds, but you realize at one point, I'm lost in the clouds. I'm not the sky anymore, I'm drifting with the clouds. So when you realize that, where do you return to? Well, to the sky, but the sky is hard to grasp. While the breath or mantra is easier to grasp. I return to my mantra, I return to the breath. In a way, it's easier. That's why, for example, in Goenka style meditation, you start with samatha, and after that you do vipassana. So samatha is the focus, and vipassana is wide angle meditation. The other way around, it wouldn't make much sense. Like if you start with the wide angle meditation, the problem is you get lost. So you first train the focusing meditation, and after that you open up and see the whole scenery, the whole landscape after that. Yeah, we still have some time, so we could, how do you say? In Japanese you would say challenge, but do you say in English challenge? A long meditation, you don't say that. Try, you would say in English, you try it with a longer meditation. In Japanese you say nanika ni challenge suru, but I don't think that's what you say in English. You would say we try a longer meditation.
Challenge yourselves too. Let's challenge ourselves.
Yes, yes. But you wouldn't say I challenge a 30-minute meditation. No, try 30 minutes. Well, 30 minutes is a little bit long, but a little bit longer. Like the next meditation, like I talked about the sky opening up. And usually I add a fourth step. Maybe I already explained in one of the first workshops. Fourth step in my metaphor would be to become the meadow itself, to become the whole scenery. So it's not so different from being the sky, or not so different from standing on top of Mount Lokko. The difference being when you're at the top of the mountain, you're far away from what is happening down there. And that can be a very liberating experience. I'm way up here. None of this doesn't really have to bother me at all. And for example, if people like myself, or maybe it was similar with Anjin, I don't really know Anjin's story, but if you choose to become a monk or a nun and you enter a temple in a way that allows you to take this perspective. You don't have to file your taxes, or in theory you have, but you have no income, you don't pay any rent, so it's very easy. Tax filing when you're training monk, it's just you have to sign. No income, no outgoing money, zero. It makes things very easy. Your whole life becomes very easy. It's like, in a way, being on top of Mount Lokko, and you still see the world around you, but it doesn't really bother you so much. But most of us don't have this option, or even like when you've trained in a monastery for a while, usually in Japan, after a while you have to leave again. You have to return to the world. Returning to the world is very important. And maybe you have a family, you have a job. So just being the sky alone often doesn't work. You also don't want to be that nervous, neurotic shepherd all the time. What can you be? What I then say is become the meadow itself. Allow the sheep to trample on you. Allow the sheep to feed on you. And if at the end of the day they want to take a dump on you, also take that. I'm here for you. You can do whatever you want with me. And in the case of Zazen, that basically means rather than detach yourself from the scenery, become the scenery. Allow those trains to really drive through you in a way. And during these 2-hour workshops, probably you don't have to deal with really terrible physical or psychological pain. But if you train in a monastery and sometimes you sit for a whole week, that can be like a train riding over you. Like sometimes the pain seems to kill you. Sometimes these stuff that come up that are 10 years, 20 years, 30 years old, but still they somehow play a big role in you. rather than detach yourself from that pain, oh, it's not really my pain, become the pain, allow the pain to swallow you, is what I would say. So sometimes it feels not so difficult from the sky perspective, the mountain perspective, but actually it's quite different in the way that you don't detach yourself from the scenery, but rather you allow the scenery to swallow you up. So if you want to try that with me as well and maybe taste if there's a difference, if it feels a little bit different from what we did before, I would say let's try that as well. And maybe this time sit a little longer, maybe 20 minutes. Is that enough? Not enough. Is it too long? I hope it's not too long. Let's sit for a little longer time, and probably 20 minutes you get lost a couple of times. And you don't have to, like for example, if you have the how do you say, if you can't really relate to this metaphor of becoming the meadow. I don't really know what he means when he says become the meadow, become the landscape, or allowing myself to be swallowed up. You can also work with what we already did. So sometimes maybe it helps you during these 20 minutes to just come back to the breath for a while, for a couple of minutes. And then you remind yourself of being the mountain and you see the whole scenery. But if you have a kind of feeling what I mean with coming down from the mountain and becoming the meadow, becoming the whole scenery, even letting go of the observer, you forget that neutral observer that's sitting in the last row of the cinema, but rather, in a way, you return to the movie, you become the movie. You allow the movie to swallow you up. If you can relate to that, you can try that as well. How did this last a little longer period work for you? Well, for Anjin it was still shorter than normal, I guess. How long do you sit when you sit at home?
Now at home I sit in the morning,
Yeah.
mostly just for 1 hour.
Yes, just 1 hour, but at a piece.
At a piece.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then I do my exercises, which is another
Mm-hmm.
1 or 2 hours, and it's really like good Zazen.
Mm, mm, mm.
Yeah. And then in the evening, sometimes I try, but I don't want to put too much pressure on my body.
Mm,
It's really.
mm. Like I'm often asked, and probably a lot of meditation teachers get this question, how long should we meditate? If I want to continue on my own at home, how long should I meditate? And usually I say, well, you can start with 1 minute, 5 minutes, and if that's not long enough, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, rather than trying to sit for at least 30 minutes right from the start. and then you don't continue. So, but then, of course, or people ask me, well, then it doesn't matter if I sit 5 minutes or 1 hour. And of course, it makes a big difference. But it's kind of hard to explain where the difference is. Or this kind of, I think you talked about it also in the beginning, that if you sit for 1 hour, there's a certain kind of movement. You go deeper. And also there's the danger of kind of drifting off and just dreaming. Sometimes short meditation can help you to be more aware. I've only 5 minutes, then you're more in the moment. While if you say, well, I've got 1 hour from now, then it's easier to drift off. But it has a different quality if you sit for a longer time. And then, of course, these session periods that we have in the monastery for 1 week, they take you in very different areas than a daily 15 or 20-minute period takes you. How was this 20-minute period for you, Peter?
The time was no problem, but the meadow was difficult.
Yes.
I like it though. It's very difficult, especially when I saw things happening on the meadow that I don't like.
Yes, yeah.
Like what?
Yeah.
Do I accept that or do I do something about it?
Yeah.
But it's nice. I've played with the screen, the movie screen, or even the Apple cinema screen idea that these things are just occurring.
Yes.
And I'm just a medium.
Yes.
And that's very hard. And the meadow is also hard, but I like it more than the screen.
If we apply this meadow metaphor to our sitting practice, probably, I don't say it's easy, but you just allow everything to happen that's happening in that moment, that's happening to you. Physical pain would be one example where sometimes we ask ourselves, well, if I allow that pain, then maybe I'm going to do permanent damage to my body. I don't want to be swallowed by the pain. But usually if it's kind of 20 minutes, 30 minutes, even 1 hour, the pain that happens in that time frame, usually it doesn't kill you. So it's not easy, but sometimes you get to the point where you allow the pain to swallow you, and then it gets actually easy. But then if you want to apply that to daily life, and the sheeps are, for example, your co-workers or some not so, I don't know, nice people that live with you, are you also willing to accept everything and allow them to do everything with you? And then the answer is, of course, no, because you're also, at the end of the day, you're also one of the sheep on the meadow. You also have to accept that fact that you also have to take care of that one person and protect that one person that you are. But maybe this way of meditating helps you to be a little bit more relaxed in your way of dealing with people that want to use you, and even sometimes you allow them to use you and you say, that's okay, that's okay. But of course it's not something that you want to happen all of the time. Sometimes, of course, you say no. Sometimes you say no. Give me a break.
Inside the meditation, you say no. Inside or outside later on.
Well, inside the meditation, probably we also say sometimes no, but inside the meditation, I think there's a safe space to say unconditional yes sometimes, even to the pain, even to the trauma or stuff that come up. If you feel ready for you can make the step and say yes, yes. And then the great thing, the great realization is, but I'm still sitting here. It doesn't kill me. You thought it would kill you. But no, I'm still here. Zazen is protecting me in a way. You thought the train would kill you, crush you, that train that's already 40 years ago, memories, whatever. But then you allow the train to roll over you and you realize, but I'm still here, Welcome.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm late.
Yeah, you made it for the last long sitting. We did a couple of 5-minute sittings, and this one was the last one.
The last one was how long? When did
20 minutes.
20 minutes.
You came maybe 5 minutes into the sitting or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my maximum usually. 20 minutes. What I can achieve next sitting.
How was it?
No, good.
Good?
I just smoothed right in, so.
Great. Great. Yeah, if you have any questions, anything you would like to share, you're welcome to do so. 聞きたいこと、シェアしたいことがあれば何でも遠慮なく聞いてもらえばと思います。
I'm sure you talked about the pain before, but I
Yes.
have always problems after 20 minutes with the pain in my legs.
Yes.
That's why I usually choose to sit differently, and
Yeah.
I think it's okay.
Mm-mm.
As long as the posture is straight. So
Mm-mm.
would you say so too? I don't have to really sit necessarily in that position. As long as the back is straight. That's my thinking.
Yeah, today I didn't talk about pain so much. I mentioned it sometimes. Didier and myself, we had to talk about it, and parts of that he already uploaded on his YouTube channels. Others are still coming. How to deal with pain. The short answer is, of course, there's limits to what your body can do, and usually pain is a warning sign. But also often we over-exaggerate that sign, or we take it as an excuse to just make ourselves comfortable. So sometimes it's hard to find that limit, but if you can, how do you say, allow yourself to sit with the pain rather than fight against the pain. That's usually the two reactions that we have, is either we grind our teeth and say, I'm not gonna move. You fight against the pain, or whenever you feel a little bit comfortable, you start to shift the legs and try to get away from the pain. And the ideal thing is that you don't do either. You don't fight against the pain, you don't try to avoid the pain, but you sit with the pain. And that goes onto a certain level quite well, but then there's this pain that seems to swallow you up. And what I said today several times is, if you allow that pain to swallow it, often it gets much easier. But allowing the pain to swallow it, again, is something different than saying, I'm not gonna move. I'm sit through it. No. It's a very relaxed way of allowing this huge pain to still swallow you up. And what then happens is this internal multiplication, that there is a pain, of course, in that moment, but usually you multiply it by 100, by 1,000. In the moment where you allow it to swallow you, that multiplication stops, and you realize the pain is still there, but it can't harm me. So sometimes it's worth to not react to the pain and just allow it to be and sit with the pain. If 20 minutes is your limit, 20 minutes might be a limit, but maybe if the pain is the reason why you stop after 20 minutes, maybe just try 25 minutes for a change and sit for these unusual 5 minutes. Especially in the beginning, it might be very uncomfortable because your inner conditioning is all 20 minutes. It's the timer is supposed to ring now. And these 5 minutes might seem very long, but it can be also a good experience, this uncomfortable. Getting out of the comfort zone is what people talk about a lot recently. But it's important, this not returning to the comfort zone. Some people think meditation means to return to the comfort zone, but actually extended regular practice usually does the opposite. It takes you out of the comfort zone. But that's important, to find your home outside the comfort zone. Usually we use for our safe spot inside the comfort zone, but to find your home outside of that comfort zone, that's kind of one point of practice.
It sometimes helps me is to think, well, that's an interesting sensation.
Yes.
A little worse than a little more intense than I've ever. Oh, isn't it amazing that the body and the mind can produce this? Just get off on it as, oh, this is something new, novelty.
Yes.
And I like novelties. Everybody likes novelties. So I'm happy I had this novelty.
Yes. Yes.
Which
Good.
can help.
Any other questions? Anything else you would like to share?
Just that it was very useful, very nice again,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very appreciative.
Thank you. Thank you. Hopefully it's not going to be the last time.
No.
We have to discuss the perfect day, the perfect time of the day. Obviously, like international school is already in holidays, so
For us, it was very nice to be
Yeah.
closer to you in
Yeah.
that way, because we were just like
yeah.
6, 7 people.
Yeah, and at Kinhin is also a nice thing that if we are less people, we can also do the square Kinhin one, maybe sometime.
Also more personal,
Yeah,
felt like.
yeah.
Yeah. So thank you again for coming, Muhu.
Thank you for having me.
And just for, I mention again, we have a donation box for Muhu. I will put it there again. And as I registered today everything, or almost everything, I will give it to you. I guess you will be faster at having it on your YouTube channel, but I will also upload it, and you can also rewatch things or share it with your friends. Okay, so, and one more thing, we want to go eat for lunch now afterwards. I don't know yet where, maybe again in the fish ramen shop or somewhere. If you're interested, please join us to eat something together. Like something close by would make sense.